Hello there, Alaskans, wherever you are. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show. Coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska. Where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started.
Well, welcome everybody to the Must Read Alaska Show. I am your host, John Quick, and boy, do we have a special treat for you today. Not only has it been sunny in Alaska in the last couple of days, but there has been quite the scuttlebutt with all the elections happening. Sarah Palin has been endorsed by Ted Nugent, which for some people, that's awesome. For most people, they don't really care, which is just a comical thing that's happens up here in Alaska. And so the special guest I have today with us is Chris By. Now, Chris By is a libertarian running for U.S. Congress, and he has been officially endorsed by the Libertarian Party. But before we go into that, I want to thank our show sponsor, Charlie Pierce for Governor. Because of Charlie Pierce for Governor, we are able to get conservative news through all the nooks and crannies of Alaska, which is just awesome. We are a shoestring budget here, competing against folks with $1 million budgets, $10,000 cameras, and studio space. I'm sitting in here in my living room with a headphones that have a broken ear on one side and a in a ear that's not broken on the other. So we thank you, Charlie Pierce for Governor, for helping sponsor the show to help us do this. It does not go in your sponsorship does not go unnoticed. Lots of people watch the show, which we are excited about. We are actually in the top 100 on iTunes in our category in 3 countries as we speak. So apparently we are big in Spain and Ireland, which I have no idea why, but we'll take it as a win. And so, Chris, welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show. How's it going in your neck of the woods, which I think is in Fairbanks?
It is. It's another beautiful day. I think we might get a little bit of rain, which we desperately need. Other than that, I've got nothing to complain about.
Well, you are running for U.S. Congress in a field of 48 folks or so, which is just a crazy field. We had Santa Claus on our show a little earlier this month, and we've had some other folks that are running in the pack of 48 on here as well. But we have not had a libertarian candidate on yet for that's in the 48. So we're excited that you're here today on the show. Tell us a little bit about who you are, just for folks that don't know, what you're running for, and what got you first involved in politics in the first place.
Sure. So for those folks that I haven't run into across Alaska, again, my name's Chris By. I am the Libertarian Party candidate for the House of Representatives in D.C. I'm a combat vet. I was served in the Army for far too long with multiple deployments overseas. And after every one of those deployments, John, I found that I didn't really understand why I was there. And so I was, obviously I talked with my leadership, right? And then I reached out to my congressional leadership, like, why, Mr. Young, why the heck am I here? And I never got any really good answers. And then I came home from Afghanistan, and a mentor of mine handed me a fantastic book, which I encourage everybody to read, written by a guy named Dr. Ron Paul. It's called Liberty Defined. And it just opened up my eyes. And then every time there was a election or a borough election or anything else, I would pin those candidates against what Dr. Ron Paul had written in that book. And I just found all of the candidates lacking. We didn't necessarily sow any seeds of liberty and freedom in any of those countries that I went to. But we did make a lot of people rich at the cost of us and some of our most treasured blood, right? So we started, and I filed in June because I just couldn't sit on the sideline anymore. We often get into the ballot box and we have to choose the lesser of two evils. I'm as guilty as the next guy. And if we really look at it, we are to blame, not just for Republicans and Democrats that we had to vote for, but I'm to blame for the $30 trillion of debt, the 20 years of war, because I settled for the lesser of two evils. And I'm not doing that anymore. I enjoy the 48 people that we have. A significant number of them are running not because of ranked choice voting. They're running because they're tired of the two primary parties like hosing us. And so now we have 48 people running, right? Which I think is just a hoot. And I'm all about it. I would say the truth stings a little bit, right? When we do that introspection, Republicans and Democrats did give us $30 trillion of debt with nothing to show for it. That burden we're going to pass on to countless future generations. The R's and D's did give us 20 years of war, as I mentioned before, that diminished our global standing, and we got literally nothing out of it. They gave us the Patriot Act, which, Stalin's wet dream. And then we have all these other increasing regulations and all that junk. And, after we had an election here recently, I noticed something unique when I went and talked to people. They realized right up front that it really didn't matter if an R or a D won. Their mill rate was going to go up. There was going to be more regulation. There was going to be more drama, and they're just tired of voting. Like they're full of voter disillusionment, right? I mean, who here isn't pissed off about that PFD? Are you kidding me? Like, why did I vote for Michicki or Bishop? I mean, give me a break. So we're like, well, why not a normal dude? That's me. Just a normal Alaskan, right? I mean, I'm a fishing guide, right? I mean, literally this morning I was tying these for pike. I just think that it's time, right? So we're going to give it a whirl.
Well,
I think complaining isn't enough anymore,
Yeah, I like the fact that for folks listening in, we have, I'm John Quick, and we have Chris By here, who's the Libertarian Party candidate for U.S. Congress. And what I love about what you just said was, it's one thing to sit on Facebook and be a keyboard warrior, or even, the next level, show up to meetings and complain and have your voice heard, which I think is super important, way more important than being a Facebook keyboard warrior. But then the next step of, okay, I'm so perturbed at what's happening that I'm going to throw my name in the hat. That is a huge step that not a lot of people are willing to take, to be honest. And as you know, you're living it. There's no more hiddenness to your life anymore. Everything is vulnerable, unfortunately, including family and friends and where you live, and secret cell phone numbers don't exist anymore, and email addresses are all public, and it's just you went from having maybe portions of your life you've been able to be keeping yours and nice and quiet to having none of those. And so I applaud you for doing that, because I think a lot of folks have never taken that step. Win, lose, or draw, when they run, it's still a huge part of what we call America is being able to run for an office. So kudos to you.
I like any candidate, I'm sure out there, we have this like little nest of ordinary people would call them trolls. I call them contrarians, right? I mean, they're just contrary to everything. If I told them they had to use oxygen to breathe, they'd hold their breath and do litigation, So what I really do to those people, and if you go to my Facebook, you'll kind of see, I offer them $100 to run. They've got until June to run. So if they got good ideas, I will pay the $100 for them to run. Knock yourself out. Go get them, Tiger. My guess is they're going to hide behind their keyboards, and they're going to hide behind their anonymity because it's safer there. That's kind of a shame. It's a detriment, because there might be other people out there who are crazy as they are, and they might actually win and succeed, but we'll never know because they lack the courage to stand up. So yeah, I totally understand, John.
Yeah, we have we have some folks that don't like Must Read Alaska, and we hear about them all the time on all of our comments. And I take a similar approach. Our approach is a little bit less than that. We just basically ignore them, which is kind of what we choose to do. But I'm not running for office, so I don't have to do anything about it. So
right.
The next question is this for you, Chris. Did serving in the Army prepare for you running as an elected official? I know that you served in the Army, and I think you became a enlisted officer. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but you had a pretty decorated career there in the Army, moving up the ranks, and it takes it does take some skill to do that. Obviously, if you're not fit for the job, you're going to peak out, and so you kept going in your career, which is pretty awesome. Did that at all prepare you for what you've now faced in the last year running for office?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, when you're being held your feet to the fire every day, to be not just successful, but bringing people along with you, right? This is no different. You know, maintaining accountability of personnel, or maintaining operation op tempo, multi-million-dollar budgets. You know, maintaining thousands of pieces of equipment. You know, adhering to regulations. You know, all those things are easily relatable items, right? I would say probably one of the largest ones that I've learned, though, is the ability to gather a fairly diverse team to accomplish a goal. You know, in the Army, you would do that under austere and conditions, and, you know, in a very timely manner, like there's no pressure, right? But, you know, here we've got a little bit more breadth and a little bit more depth in Alaska, and some of the intricacies of what we have to accomplish. You know, I'd say one of the most important things I learned while I was in the Army that's applicable to this: before starting any plan, you have to gather your information. And part of gathering your information is simply listening. It's probably the most critical thing, actually, this campaign does, is just sitting down and listening to people. You probably noticed on our off, I was writing notes. I'm a meticulous note taker. If you go to my website, it's timealaska.com. It was a little pun on Don Young because I thought it was time for him to retire. All those items that you see on that, I didn't dream up. I literally went and asked people for their feedback, and I listened and I wrote it down, and I took it home I got a little brain trust of vets and some others, and we researched it and we made it into a platform, and then we put it onto the internet. I didn't dream any of that up. I just listened to people, and I find that to be extremely useful. Yeah, very useful.
Who would have thought, listening to people?
Right.
It's a concept that other politicians need to figure out how to do a little better. So tell me, excuse me, my cough. Give me one or two of your accomplishments that you're most proud of, and why. I know that you've had an awesome career in the Army, and you've been running, I think, for office for the last almost year. And you probably had some accomplishments in your time that you're proud of. Give us a couple of those examples.
Sure. You know, some of you guys might find these to be a little lacking, but obviously my service ranks fairly high, right? But I would say we're heavy into the volunteer here in Fairbanks, and instilling into my family and my neighbors and my friends the sense of service is uplifting. You know, witnessing service across Fairbanks is, for me, electrifying. Right? It's not. I mean, it's good that I serve my country and everything, but it's just electrifying to do it for your own community, you know. And whether it's Miss Ann and her team at the food bank, or Miss Berkowitz and Landon at the homeschool small arms shooting league, or Mr. Colton and his refs and all the coaches of Fairbanks Youth Soccer, you know, where they routinely provide tangible service to the community. It's, for me, it's motivating. Extremely motivating. And I would say those opportunities where we got out and we actually volunteered across Fairbanks are, for me, a deep accomplishment, because you know, that takes time, effort, a little blood, sweat, and tears to do it. And you know, I see myself or my family and others around me doing it routinely, even at minus 50, you know, shoveling our neighbor. Or we have a widow up the road here, and we take care of her lane. You know, I mean, there's simple, small things. I know there's folks out there who are like, that's stupid. But to me, that's an accomplishment that I can look at my kids and say, that's important. You need to go do it without me telling you. And they go up there and they take care of Miss Mo or Miss Name or Miss Joan, without me asking. Like, that's like that right there, like, hits hard, you know? And then I would say, you probably, if you don't know this already, John, we don't raise kids in the Bai household. We raise maturing adults. There are no kids in this house. Everybody's got a job and everybody rows. Like, that's just how it goes. And my wife and I expect our daughter and our 3 sons to be steadfast and courageous, even when it's unpopular. So my daughter goes to a Bible college in Phoenix, and she's she's a question asker. Like she asks very difficult questions about love and in service, and how that relates to church. And it makes some people fairly uncomfortable, because it's a very homogeneous population there at the school. And so she's bringing a little bit of spice to that area, because
I love
I
it.
raise steadfast, courageous kids, or young adults, right? And then
You got to be
my
proud of
boy,
that.
right? And then my boy is equally steadfast and courageous. He's a dual enrolled high school student over here at UAF, and some of the courses are not designed to teach at UAF, and that hurts me to say. And he has had to stand up amongst 20 something year olds and tell those instructors they're wrong. And he hasn't just done it once. He hasn't done it twice. He's done it like 6 times. And I just find that to be, as a dad, like motivating, right? If my boy can do that, I better get out there and do it too, right?
Yeah.
So I think we've instilled in our kids the ability to do critical thinking. And I think that's imperative life skill, right? And I think it's just as imperative as empathy, integrity, and service for their character to make this world just a little bit better. And it starts right here at home and my community, my neighbors, right? And so those are my 2 accomplishments, I guess. My family, my boys, and my daughter being courageous and steadfast, and instilling in them the desire to help those around us. Yeah,
That's
those
awesome.
are probably it.
Well, folks that are listening in, you're just witnessing in front of you, very own eyes, a normal person running for Congress, which is a breath of fresh air. He did not hold up his trophies, although he probably could have. I'm sure you've won many medals and awards in your Army career, but Chris, you just listed your kids and volunteer service as your 2 accomplishments, which I think, as a father, I have 3 of my own, is a very impactful and honoring thing to talk about, because I think that those are the things that I think that we're missing in our communities. Actual, real, tangible things that make a difference and aren't just cool things to put on a shelf. So, way to go for that. I think the next question I have for you is this. I think when people hear about the Libertarian Party, I'm a fan of the Libertarian Party, so I have to share my bias. Even though I'm a registered Republican, I'm a huge fan of the Libertarian Party. I think that it represents Alaskan values probably better than any other party, because it is fiercely independent. So much so, I think one of the downsides of the Libertarian Party is it's hard to organize because people are so fiercely independent. But give us a picture for folks that maybe don't know anything about the Libertarian Party. Give us a picture of what kind of sets the Libertarian Party apart from the Democratic Party or the Republican Party.
Sure. So let's start
and you
with a test.
You won't offend me either.
Let's start with a test, and then we'll get into some of the nuts and bolts, right? For those of you who are listening, if you answer yes to either of these questions, you're actually a libertarian. You're in the wrong party. All right. So if you answer yes to the following question, do you think it's wrong to hurt people? All right. You've made your answer. I'm assuming it's yes. Do you think it's wrong to take people's stuff? Again, I'm assuming you said yes. You're actually libertarians. I know it's a stretch, but you truly are. Okay, John, I'll be easy. This is actually a pretty easy question. We have the best record of being right. We didn't vote for the $30 trillion of debt, and we didn't vote for the Patriot Act, and we didn't vote for the $1.2 trillion Infrastructure Act. We didn't vote for a vaccine roster like Mr. Young did. We didn't approve the authorization of use of military force twice, maintaining the absolutely poor use of our most treasured resource, the blood of the United States military. Republicans and Democrats collaborated on all these and a whole host of other really poor decisions. As a party, we were the first to question these mandates in all their forms. I think what I would really like your audience to know is that when you elect a person with a label at the end of their name, an R or a D, one thing is for sure. Upon reaching DC, they're going to be given a new dance partner. And it's not us. It's not Alaskans. And if you think Mitch McConnell or Kevin McCarthy or Chucky Schumer or Nancy Pelosi care about Alaska, you're not paying attention. And if you think the RNC or the DNC care about Alaskans, you're naive. That's not how that works. Frankly, the Republicans. Let's look at the infrastructure bill, right? $1.2 trillion, right? And we probably, on MRK, on Must Read Alaska, I listened to and read the story about, for the first time ever, our 3 representatives went to Juneau, or at least did a Zoom meeting with Juneau. Are you kidding me? We've been a state since '59. That was the first time the 3 of them were around to talk about stuff. That's dumb. That's just dumb. I expect better from those guys. Looking at that $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill is a good example. Frankly, the Republicans wanted the money, but they didn't want the debt blame. So Mitch and the gang looked around and they were like, who is in the most solid Republican seat that we can get to vote for this travesty? Because we want the money, we just don't want the blame. And they came to Alaskans. That's what they did. Because they knew that those Alaskan representatives were going to get reelected because everybody would forgive them for $1.2 trillion. It's just going to get thrown away. Now, I've admitted on other programs, I'm a 70% libertarian, right? And I've got a very mean streak of independent. And I think that's what's cool, because the Libertarian Party, Alaskan Libertarian Party, still embraces someone like me. Now, unlike other parties, differences are not just accepted, they're expected. And it's taken roughly since 1936 for the Republicans and the Democrats to build this like house of cards that we call the federal government, right?
Hey,
and it's going to take some time.
There's a show out there like that. It's called House of Cards.
Right? Yeah. And the Libertarian Party and others realize it's going to take some time to remove these house of cards so it doesn't come crashing down. And we trust Alaskans to understand this as well. That's kind of the cool thing about being a libertarian, right? I only have one special interest and only one dance partner, Alaskans. Like straight up, that's who I answer to. I don't answer to anybody else. That's who I'll be answering to. And that's how we're going to run. When I win, we're going to have a seat at the table for everybody. It's going to have to be a really big table. And everybody's invited. Even those who didn't vote for me, they're still invited because I'll be their representative too. So that's how we run things. That's how libertarians run things.
Well, I think that's oftentimes I think one of the bad avenues in which we've gone down in the last several years here in the U.S. and even in Alaska is we've refused to talk to people or have a conversation with folks that we disagree with. And I think that is just such a sad thing, because I think that's what makes America great. Is I could sit here and tell you that I feel like the Republican Party is the best seat in town, and you could tell me that the Libertarian Party is the best seat in town, and I don't have to scream at you, yell at you, and you don't have to do the same to me, and we can just have a conversation about why we think this or that's better. And I think that there's so few people willing to do that today because of the polarization of what the mainstream media and elected officials have caused a lot of that to happen as well. And so, we get flack from that. Must Read Alaska gets flack. Why'd you interview Santa Claus? He's a communist Democrat. Why'd you interview blah, blah, blah? Well, I think it's important for folks in Alaska to hear from people that are running for office for the one position that we have in U.S. Congress. If Santa happens to win, I want the folks that are listening to Must Read Alaska to know where Santa Claus stands on certain issues. And so even though I don't agree with Santa Claus, I think it's important to hear him out. And so I appreciate your stance on some of those things, because I think, having people sit at your table that you don't agree with is that seems to be dying with today's day and age, which is a sad thing.
I mentioned it a little bit earlier, and I probably should have paused on that point. In traveling from the Southeast, all the way up just north of Fairbanks, I don't run into too many libertarians. I run into quite a few, depending on where I'm at. In Juneau, it was very, very blue. I really wish I'd have gotten to see Jeff Landfield, but he was busy because I find his stuff, it makes me chuckle. I won't lie. There's some stories on there that are just really funny. Like the one where he camps out at the airport and reports on people coming in and going. I mean, I just find that exciting. I really find that funny. Um, but what I really like about running is I have met so many people, and contrary to what the media would want us to believe, there really isn't that many differences, at least not in Alaska. We're actually pretty close to normal, and there's millions of us just like us. And if we just took the time to turn the TV off, if we did it, we pulled a Jack Johnson and asked where all the good people have gone, and we just like turned that off, you know, and went to our neighbors and just asked how we're doing, I think we'd be much better off. I probably sound like, some kind of Bob Marley, John Lennon hippie or something by saying
are you a guru up in Fairbanks, are you?
Right. But what I would say, we talked a little bit about libertarians, right? Just so folks know, we do have doctors. We do have normal folks in it. It is one of the largest political organizations in the military right now for darn good reason, because there's no good reason to go back to Iraq or Afghanistan. Trust me on this one. And Ukraine isn't any better. They're all quagmires with no real good endings in it, except for heartache. There's other ways to accomplish business, and we don't have to send our most treasured blood over there.
Yeah. One of the just bare bones examples of endless war kind of talk is, when the tragedy of 9/11 happened, we created a 9/11 fund for the victims of 9/11 that were in the U.S. That fund was $7 billion. We just sent $40 billion to Ukraine, but we only got mustered enough to fund our own people $7 billion. And man, sometimes I feel like we forgot about the folks that live here in America that are homeless, that are actually struggling, that are U.S. citizens, and it is good to help people all around the world. But I think sometimes we forget about the folks that are here in the U.S. And so, one of the things I wanted to ask you, Chris, is libertarians have probably a slew of things that they care about. What are some of the top issues that you're running on in your candidacy here? What are some of the things that you're kind of highlighting as you've campaigned the last year or so?
Sure. So for those folks who've gone to my website, right up front, I'm a term limit guy. I think term limits are beyond necessary. They keep folks in check. And because of that, I've got to really focus heavily on items, and I've got to really row hard in the beginning, right, to get my feet going. And there's two that really come to mind, and these weren't Chris Bay's ideas. Again, these were brought to me by other Alaskans who are like, Chris, these are important. And I got them so many times that they have now percolated to the top. Because when I started, it was like the military and audits and balanced budget amendment and some other things that I think are key to success. But these two items came up fast and furious. One was land management and resource development. And the next one was the North Pacific Fisheries Management Council. So let's talk real briefly about these two items. We've been a state since '59, right? And we're still waiting on 36 million acres to be handed over to us from DC. 36 million acres. 36 million acres is the equivalent of the state of New York. So think that through all the way. Think how many people live in the state of New York and what that economic engine truly represents. That land isn't just dirt. That land represents opportunity. The budget from the Alaskan government to the University of Alaska system is off the scales, right? I mean, it's huge. And so the state is funding the university system, and the university system takes that money along with tuition and produces some of the most amazing young professionals. And then we export them, right? We fund it, We grow them, we nurture them, and then we export these folks because there are no jobs here in Alaska. The rumor I heard was something like a third of these professionals get exported because there just isn't any jobs, or there's no jobs, no job future, if you will. Like they can get the base bottom job, but they're not going to go up anymore. That land frozen in the sea of bureaucracy represents future jobs for graduates in systems management, engineering, petroleum engineering, environmentalists, botanists, biologists, teachers, nurses, right? Because all those jobs have second and third order effects that come with them. And that land and the resource management of it isn't just a campaign slogan, right? That's, again, future opportunities. That land also represents tourism, right? And how we can best make it environmentally sustainable so we can bring tourism in and we can have development at the same time. It can be done. I firmly believe it. We've waited pretty long. I mean, we had the same guy there for 47 years and we're still waiting on 36 million acres. I'm going to expedite that. All right. So the second thing, which is one of those that percolated up, right? That would be, we've got to fix the North Pacific Fisheries Management Council to reflect upriver conditions, right? Salmon is a statewide issue. That council makes it just an ocean issue. And that council is failing us. It's failing all Alaskans. Fisheries are only a renewable resource until they're extinct. And then it's not so renewable. What we need to do is we need to remove Washington and Oregon from their seats on that council and replace them with, I don't know, let's use Galena, Fort Yukon, Eagle, Bethel, Aniak. Somebody who represents upriver, upstream on the Yukon or Kuskokwim, have them sit on those seats and make some of those decisions. These are folks who aren't industry bound. They're lifestyle bound, right? Right now we're paying a lot of these folks emergency funds from a self-licking ice cream cone that was brought to us by the federal government and the state government. And at the end of the day, it's taxpayers who are going to have to clean that mess up. And if we're not going to have taxpayers on those boards and those councils, then we're going to continually have really poor decisions. That's just how it is. So we're gonna fix that. It all goes back to making sure we've got future opportunities, right? So those are the two things. And go to my website, and if you think we need to add more, add more. I'm a fishing guide. I'm not a politician. I'm a citizen legislator. So
yeah, one of the staunch arguments here on the Kenai Peninsula for the last forever has been the commercial fishing guys versus the sports, right? They're always suing each other. They can't agree that the sky's blue. And if these groups could come together and figure out, I always thought, man, these fish are being caught before they even get to Alaska waters. There's a group out there in Washington, Oregon with huge boats that are getting all these fish before they even touch Alaska waters. And that's one of the huge reasons I think that our fishing industry is just tanked over. I mean, on the Kenai Peninsula, commercial fishing is just it's non-existent. And there's folks on the Kenai River that have basically not even broke even the last couple of years. They're losing money, losing their livelihood, and it's very sad to see. And I think we're going after the wrong groups. I think the commercial fishing guys and the sports fishing guys should go one more step down the road and find the folks that are getting these fish before they even hit our waters and go after those folks. So I like I like one of your points.
And that's the Fisheries Council. That region that the North Pacific covers is only Alaska waters. So why does Washington and Oregon even have a seat on that council? It's frustrating. They already have seats on their Pacific Fisheries Management Council, which, by the way, is tanking. So why in the world would we allow these industry insiders to regulate and to interfere with the way the state views salmon as a statewide issue, right? I mean, why would we do that?
Well, Chris, that's just the way we've always done it.
And that's what we're all about, right? I mean, that's why you've got a libertarian candidate. You don't have to settle for this binary choice. You've got an ordinary, well, moderately ordinary guy, right? Running for Congress who simply sees things in an out-of-the-box problem-solving method. And this is a simple one we can fix. Will it take time? Absolutely. I mean, if you go to the website, you'll see we also want to phase out bottom trawling, right? These are those big nets that they just drag across the bottom. That is the number one issue for Republicans to Democrats that everybody agrees on in Alaska. So why are we not doing it? If there's one thing that we all can agree on, besides needing oxygen to breathe, is that bottom trawling is bad. Why is the council not responsive to our demands? Why? We've got to fix that. We just have to.
Simple reason, they could care less.
There's a lot of money involved. You're
Yeah.
probably not going to find any other candidate that's willing to talk about this like me.
Well, there is one
You're just
candidate. It's but he's not running for U.S. Congress. It's Charlie Pierce.
Okay. I defer to Charlie and Edie, who, by the way, if you haven't met Edie, she is she's a hero of mine. Straight out, she's awesome.
He talks a lot about the bycatch,
Yeah.
which he has kind of gone after as a thing that is just not good for anybody. This huge,
That's right.
And a lot of people don't even. I'm not a bycatch expert by any means, but a lot of people don't even know what bycatch is, which is not any fault of their own, but essentially it's just a way to waste a lot of fish. That's a legal way right now, and it's debilitating to folks that are trying to make a living catching, let's say, halibut on commercial or sports fish expeditions in Homer. It's going to be tough to catch a halibut, one or two halibut, when bycatch catches thousands of them. And so it's things like that people have been unwilling to tackle because it ruffles feathers and it gets the good old boys club mad. Yeah.
You know, John, that's what I'm all about. Let's ruffle those feathers. Let's fluff that pole. Let's get her moving.
My last question to you is this, Chris. It's a two-parter. If there's anything we haven't covered today, feel free to have this couple minutes here to talk about it, and then tell people where they can find you on Facebook, your website, if they want to get involved, if they want to be a volunteer or donate. Give people the 1, 2, 3 of how they would do that.
Sure. So you briefly touched a subject earlier, and I would mind if we go back to it. You'd sent me a question about, who's my hero and why. I served in the Army and I've been around the world, so we're not going to talk about war stories. I'm going to tell you about a hero that's here in Fairbanks that I've recently ran into. We do a lot of feeding of homeless folks up here in Fairbanks. I think charity belongs to the people and not to the government, and so we're actively out there doing it, right? And I ran into a gentleman, a transient named Shorty. That's pretty good analogy of what he looks like. He's a short little feller. His nickname amongst the natives is Shashia Gusuk, right? Gusuk is slang for white guy, and Shashia is Wiccan for brother. So his nickname is Brother White Guy. And this man, he's made all kinds of mistakes in his life, but he's determined not to allow those mistakes to dictate his future and define who he is. He is a mediator, a counselor, a helper, a friend. I don't know, a true brother to the homeless population in Fairbanks. Any of the homeless know this guy. I mean, whether it's him giving them cigarettes or him finding them a coat, mittens, hats. I mean, he doesn't get paid. He's extremely reliable. He's relied upon for honest, impartial advice for a host of issues that well exceed, his academia credentials, right? He doesn't look for government handouts. He just tries to make the world a little better around himself. And that's really what this campaign's all about, right? The guy gets up every day, regardless of the temperature, and it gets freaking cold up here. And he's out there looking for homeless people to give them a blanket.
Pretty awesome.
I mean, I hate to get emotional, but ugh. That's like deep down inside, like that's our job, and we are failing at it because we have ceded it over to the federal government. And we're missed out on all these opportunities to meet people like, Shashia Gusick, right? So yeah, there's a hero for you. Like if you're looking for them, they're everywhere. Like I just happened to run into this guy because I was handing out food for a little while. And now he knows where we meet, and he shows up and he brings this group of folks, who are just looking for a meal. And yeah, he's like the intermediary, right? And guy doesn't get paid. And I tried to give him money. You know what he wants? He wants coats. He wants coats in size large, and he wants gloves and hats. Like that's what he wants. So we give it to him. Why not? So yeah. So if you're out there and you're wondering where all the good people have gone, they're still here.
Yeah.
They just don't get media attention, right? So and then lastly, like what else would I like to share? I'll put this out quickly. I realize how hard it is for me to ask folks to stray from their typical political pathway. I know I've been there, right? And I know that feeling where we continually go to the voter box, we select the lesser of two evils, and we pray and we hope and we beg and we plead that things turn out better. And then we get that eye blinking shock, right? And then we're like, what the heck? That's not what I sent this guy there to do. And then we're like, why? Why did you vote that way? We send all these letters and I'm pretty sure they don't get read. And then the disappointment sets in, right? I mean, that's me. Like I've been there. I mean, just look at our PFD for goodness sakes. And I mean, how many of us got Machikied or Bishoped, right? Over that PFD. I mean, that's just asinine. And that happens at the federal level as well. I find myself asking all the time, like, holy buckets, is this the best we got? Like these are the decision makers we've got. We need normal people up there. We need to get rid of career politicians and any groomed ones and just put normal folks up there. It's time. And if we don't get off the sideline, we're going to be hurting. I drive the Alcan a lot. And I was driving up through Hartington, Nebraska on my way back up to Alaska through the Alcan. And right outside Hartington is this big red barn. And on the side of the barn in big bold letters reads, "Home of the free because of the brave." Behind has this wavy flag, right? I understand the meaning up front, right? We're free because of the work vets have done. I understand that. But I think that sign goes much, much, much deeper. To remain free, it is imperative that voters also execute bravery. They just have to. Otherwise, we continually vote for the lesser of two evils and we get $30 trillion of debt. You keep making left turn and right-hand turns, you come back to $30 trillion of debt. That's a burden we're putting on kids who aren't even born yet, who aren't even in the workforce yet. We got to do better. We just have to. I would end with this. If you look back at the historical facts, again, $30 trillion of debt, 20 years of war, the Patriot Act, all this other stuff brought to us by Democrats and Republicans. We have to ask, why would we continue to put our faith in these two parties? It doesn't make sense. It's contrary to forward movement. I don't care how folks voted in the past, John, and in the audience. I don't care how you voted in the past. I care about how you vote in the future. Because that vote represents opportunity. Opportunity for us currently and future opportunities. Now, I'm just a vet turned fishing guide, right? I'm not a politician. I'm a citizen legislator, but I can't sit on the sideline anymore. And I recommend you don't either. The thing that I learned from an Alaskan, John, this is a slogan I got when I was down in the Matt Sioux Sports Show. Typical Alaskans can make better decisions than groomed or career politicians, period. When I was 12, I was fishing. I wasn't dreaming about being the next Republican anything. I didn't follow Don Young around for 5 to 6 weeks. I don't have that accolade. I'm a fishing guide. So I don't have those ins and outs of politician bureaucracy crap. I'm just a normal dude. Like, you can find out more about me at itstimealaska.com. I know I mentioned that earlier. It was a really bad pun as we started last year, thinking that it was time for Don Young to retire. So it's timealaska.com. I'd ask folks to check it out. Again, I'm just a citizen legislator, right? I don't have all the answers, So if you go on there and you see something wrong or something that needs to be added, please let me know. Don't let me walk around with no clothes on, right? I don't know these things. And I think you should know everything on there is generated by Alaskans for Alaskans. I encourage that refinement because, again, I'm just a dude. John, I appreciate this opportunity. I was one of those guys who like poked you guys in the eye. I'm like, holy crap, you had Santa Claus on, but you can't have like a real dude. So yeah, that was me. And I did post that on Facebook because I've been blocked because of my email address. Thank you. But I'm okay with it. I'm tough. But I do appreciate this opportunity, John.
Nice. Thanks so much for joining us, Chris. And for those of you that are listening, thanks so much for joining Chris and I here for probably, 45 minutes. We went a little long, which I think is fine. It was fun to hear from you, Chris, and wish you luck in your campaign. And if, we'll see how this plays out, but I would say keep in mind, Fairbanks Assembly or something like that. I'd love to see you. I think that's one of the things that if libertarians got organized, they could kick butt in local elections because the bigger Republican Party has not been involved in assembly races or city council races or borough races.
One of the best accolades I've received in this came from my very blue public school administrator. I was down in the Southeast, and she came up to me. She talked with me. I listened, and then she walked off. And she came back, and then she's a little shorter lady, and she put her hand on my shoulder, and she was like, "Chris, I am so glad you don't have millions of dollars because you would be politically terrifying." I mean, you have a blue person who's voted blue for 30 years who's supporting you. Like, you would be terrifying. And I responded to her. I'm like, I hung up that battle rattle years ago. I'm not terrifying anymore. What's terrifying is the rest of the people coming behind me. I mean, those dudes aren't playing around. So it was quite an accolade to get from a 30-year voting Democrat to say, I'm going to vote for you. I'm going to put some trust in you because I can see that you're actually about Alaskans and the love for Alaskans. So I would just ask folks, think about it, right? It could happen. Worst things could happen. But I'm a term limit guy. So John, it'll be your turn next.
How we roll. I'll stick to interviewing folks. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and we want to thank our show sponsor Charlie Pierce for Governor for sponsoring the show because
thanks, Charlie.
Because of Charlie, we're able to spread conservative news through all the nooks and crannies of Alaska. We don't shy away from the fact that we do represent conservative news in Alaska. We don't try to pretend like we're something we're not, like our competitors might do. So we are very boldly out there saying that we represent conservative news, and we're proud of it. So thanks everybody for tuning in. We're going to have a show, I believe, on Friday. I don't know who our guest may be. It may be an assembly lady from Anchorage. So that'll be lively, as the assembly there has tried to pass an ordinance to basically say that we can remove the mayor if he offends us. Essentially, that's what the ordinance is saying at the Anchorage Assembly. So hopefully we'll have an assembly person on Friday to talk about what that means. Until then, signing off from somewhere, Alaska, I'm your host, John Quick. Thanks so much for tuning in.